like the gain on that at all. It is August 20th, 2025, and I breaking my promise again. I came to a revelation just a few minutes ago during the Jonathan Cooey Giga Ohm Biological live stream today on August 20th, 2025. And as Jonathan was Dr. Cooey was making it very clear how what we had in the United States was murder and lies. We had murder and lies over the last several years, and it's being sold as a pandemic. We had murder and lies, and now it's being sold as, I don't know, bad government, bad military, bad vaccine. Of course, no bad vaccine happens from the bad military, the bad government, if there wasn't enough murder and lies and manipulation on the internet to push this darn product in the first place, which isn't, I mean, even the term vaccine, it really means of cow and smallpox immunization. So it's a transfection, an intramuscular transfection. The drug epidemic in the United States of America, in particular from opioids, real poppy or synthetic, is the greatest single loss of life event in terms of years not lived in the history of the United States of America. And for some reason, other channels still won't say that. They still go on suggesting that there was some deadly RNA pandemic causing virus. Do you work for the State Department or the FBI if you continue to repeat that? I'm not sure which one it is. And somehow a little channel like mine represents more death than really any other channel on the entire internet right now. I mean, there you have it, at least as far as Americans go. And if you want to ratio it by views and subscribers, I basically am half the internet. Okay, it is whatever the case there. Joe Rogan, and it's come clear to me right now, is a key part of making the drug epidemic in the United States of America possible. Joe Rogan has glorified drug use. Joe Rogan has celebrated, glorified, and destigmatized drug use while not talking about the opioid epidemic. Joe Rogan has glorified, promoted drug use during the drug epidemic. Joe Rogan, the largest podcast on the internet, made possible by the state, of course, did not talk about the opioid epidemic. They had one person on November of 2019, and they blamed it on pharma. No, I'm sorry. It is the responsibility of the United States government, and it's, of course, that in turn is the citizenry. But I don't think most Americans have any idea about how badly they were getting snowed here. Americans were unprepared, myself included, to know how social media was going to snow us. And you know what Joe Rogan and other leading independent podcasters said? They said the war on drug failed. So the largest loss of life event in the history of the United States happens after the war on drugs ends. Do you think that's any coincidence? Trust me, the moment they curtail and have a few less measles vaccines, they're going to be saying there's been dozens or hundreds of people killed for lack of measles vaccines. So why should we not? Look, I'm not saying that the war on drugs was 100% effective. Of course it wasn't. I'm not saying it wasn't riddled with corruption itself. Of course it was. But the reality is that we have 100% correlation with dropping the war on drugs and the worst loss of life event in the history of the United States of America. The only thing that is worse or was worse was the United States Civil War, when you factor in number of deaths and the average age of death, and that was worse because the United States population was about, 30% then? Maybe it was 25% then, what it is now. Joe Rogan celebrated drug use. Peyote, marijuana, just coughing away. And meanwhile, he's doing whatever, steroids and supplements necessary. I'm sure he has all the money in the world to buy the best meat possible, to have the best body possible, to make it look like it doesn't bother him. The United States went through this drug epidemic because of podcasters, and I'm now saying the most responsible person is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the most responsible podcaster. Whether he should know it. He had people on to talk about the drug epidemic, or he was told to. Now, I'm sure Joe Rogan is kept in a little bubble. I'm sure that there's things that they don't let him know. I'm sure that there's things he can't watch. So when I say Joe Rogan, I don't mean, the world is fine and pure and clean, and then Joe Rogan himself, walked in his little 5'5" frame and made the drug epidemic. What I'm saying is that Joe Rogan, the machinery, this whole world of Joe Rogan, of which Joe Rogan, of course, is the natural face. If Joe Rogan was never born, someone else would be there doing exactly the same thing. The Joe Rogan podcast machine, this realm. And make no mistake, where did Joe Rogan get his boost? Oh, that's right. A show called News Radio, where he played a carpenter and a conspiracy theorist worried about UFOs. That's pretty interesting. Now, as I tangent here just slightly, but not really, one of the worst deaths known, at least during my lifetime, as far as a Hollywood actor goes, was comedian Phil Hartman, who died in 1998. Now, Phil Hartman was on Saturday Night Live. Phil Hartman was famous for doing impersonations of President Clinton. Phil Hartman, by the way, was a real big person in this Los Angeles comedian routine act called The Groundlings, which Quentin Tarantino has drawn people from, which Harvey Weinstein has drawn people from, which Kathy Griffin and it was either Jimmy Kimmel or Adam Carolla were also big parts of. I don't know how involved Joe Rogan was himself with this Groundlings crew. Quentin Tarantino, of course, draws from it. I'm sure I've just mentioned that already, but this is important. So, the big star on the news radio show was Phil Hartman. He was on it for, 4 seasons? I didn't really watch the show myself. I just read the Wikipedia a little while ago. I'm putting some of this stuff together. Joe Rogan became good friends with Phil Hartman. And Phil Hartman wound up getting murdered, shot 3 times by Phil Hartman's wife. And then Phil Hartman's wife, might have actually tried to kill her own kids. It's a little bit of a weird story. But then the wife wound up locking herself in the bathroom before putting the gun barrel into her mouth and killing herself. I think that's the way she killed herself, yeah. Now, it's interesting because did you know Joe Rogan became really good friends with Phil Hartman before Phil Hartman died, was shot by his wife, who was also a bit of a failing, aspiring actress? Now, I imagine other people knew the Hartman family, and I don't think there's necessarily any conspiracy beyond what is obviously horrible and tragic. And, they had 2 kids. Fortunately, the kids did not die. In many cases like this, the children get killed also. The children lived and they were raised by an aunt or an uncle, and God bless them. I hope things turn out well. And I'm not saying that there was any evil necessarily between Phil Hartman or his wife. The whole situation was awful. But the most likely cause of it was, domestic unrest and, of course, right, and the impact of drugs. Now, we don't know the details. I believe Phil Hartman's wife was using cocaine, heroin, some antidepressant from Pfizer, alcohol, and several other things. It's a recipe for disaster. It usually doesn't always result in a spouse killing their partner, But that's what happened in this case, and then they killed themselves. Joe Rogan became such good friends with Phil Hartman that he was actually encouraging Phil Hartman to leave Phil Hartman's wife beforehand, over the 1 or 2 years ahead of time. So let's watch Joe Rogan here recall the story. Now, I'm not the expert on assessing truth or lying. The way he tells the story, I think Joe Rogan genuinely became, friends with Phil Hartman. He certainly was an acquaintance, very least being on the show. By the way, keep in mind that before the news radio show, Joe Rogan was on a one-season show called Hardball that was put on by Walt Disney. So Walt Disney TV, or Walt Disney Studios, which is connected with Harvey Weinstein and Miramax, was the supporter of this show Hardball, which Joe Rogan was a star of for 1 year before Joe Rogan went on to have this supporting role as a conspiracy theorist, a UFO conspiracy theorist, and a carpenter in a show called News Radio, of all things, where I believe the main anchor, the main star of the show was Phil Hartman. So this is recently. So finally, Joe Rogan is now recalling the details of this murder-suicide. And
I remember it took him.
And the reason why I'm playing this is, if one of your best friends dies in a murder-suicide, and you're this rocked by it, and you know drug use played a part, how the beep can you go on and make a career out of saying the war on drugs failed during the largest loss of life event in the history of the United States of America? Or second largest, adjusting for population, with the Civil War being the worst. How do you do that while celebrating drug use? Celebrating it, smiling. It's awesome. It's funny. It's great. And look, God put these things on a planet, okay? There's many people, many generations, many cultures which have used drugs in a medicinal, psychedelic, improving way. There's limits to everything. Things are a tool. You know what? Bacon tastes great. Eating 5 pounds of bacon a day, not a good idea. Okay? There's limits. This isn't to say no one should ever do drugs. But we have to be realistic about the cost. And I don't mean just, it's funny, we don't care. We need to think about the cost in terms of death, in accidents, in lost children, and lost productivity. We have to look at it in those ways. And we ignored the largest loss of life event in the history of the United States of America while he went on laughing. Drugs are awesome. The war on drugs failed. And he should have known. He had a clue as his good friend was shot to death. Once in the head, one in the neck, one in the chest by his wife, who was suffering from some condition while she was heavily medicated. He should know. It's not a joke.
Yeah, she used to like insult him at parties and shit, Phil Hartman's wife. It was really rough. I remember we all went to this party once, like some industry type party, and she was insulting him, and I was like, oh, I had to bite my tongue, which I'm not very good at, you know.
No.
And I was like, and then, you know, he and I were in his little dressing room, and I was telling him, man, like, there's another way. You don't have to do, you're a great guy. Like, you're a great guy. You're a lot of fun. You'd be a better person if you were with someone better. Like, you'd feel better about yourself. Like, you can't be feeling good about yourself.
Fuck no.
Sorry for the cursing.
You know, but he had kids, too, which complicates the fuck out of everything.
He had kids with her?
Mm-hmm.
You know, recently, someone who wound up being a traitorous bastard to the channel, I think you can guess who he is, made a great big stink that nobody should get popular if they curse. Yet somehow, this idiot, who I think is connected with the United States State Department, said nothing about Joe Rogan. He defended Joe Rogan. Don't touch Joe Rogan. Don't touch Robert Malone. Don't talk about the drug epidemic. Leave it alone. Hey, don't be so upset about someone in your own family dying of a drug overdose. Let it go. That's right. I believe a United States State Department associate was actually infiltrating my small community here, saying, don't worry about the drug epidemic, let it go, and oh, by the way, celebrate Marxism and the future of liberalism in the United States and America under Gavin Newsom, who also celebrates drug use and denies the drug epidemic. Isn't it wonderful? Do you know if there was a flood of people into the United States without documentation, isn't it odd how that seemed to coincide with a lack of any border enforcement and the end of the war on drugs? That's right. Shut up while your countrymen get killed and accept the globalist future and the replacement population. Joe Rogan will not mention 1 million dead. He won't mention it. He takes money to lie about why people die, like many other people in the fake conservative movement. He's not a conservative, which is fine. He's still an American. Oh, by the way, he did grow up in Newton, Massachusetts, after his parents' divorce. Newton, Massachusetts is one of the wealthiest towns in the state. Just throwing that one out there. Not a cheap place to live. Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a...
Oh, finally he's crying. Has he ever cried before? I guess he doesn't know. We had 1 million opioid overdose-related deaths in the United States in the last 14 years. Well over 900,000 at the very least, depending upon how you count it. Remember, our baseline was not 110,000 drug overdose deaths a year. It was 20,000 a year. And you know what was happened when we had 20,000 drug overdose a year? We had an unsuccessful war on drugs. The unsuccessful war on drugs, which we are supposed to laugh at as comical failure, had 20,000 drug overdose deaths a year. But now we have this meathead on the air, on a podcast, making millions, celebrating drug use, not talking about the drug overdose deaths numbers, and saying the war on drugs was a failure. And now we had years of 100 to 120,000 or potentially more drug overdose deaths in the United States of America for several years in a row. That would not have happened if we still had the war on drugs. That would not have happened if we had podcasters who were actually talking about this epidemic of grandparents raising their grandchildren. That would not have happened if people were allowed to get on the air and talk about this. That would not have happened if my channel was actually growing at the same rate as it did in its first few weeks. I got nearly all my channel growth in the first few months. And since then, it's been muted. The decision that was made to personally censor me cost lives. That's the truth. And the decision that was made to protect Joe Rogan and boost Joe Rogan also cost lives. The 1 million dead from the opioid epidemic happened because of the Joe Rogan podcast.
Horrible fucking story.
Did I ever tell you the story about like the worst I ever bombed on stage right after that? Like easily the worst I've ever bombed on stage. Did I ever tell you the story?
I've never seen you bomb on stage.
I was at the gas station and I was getting gas. It was 2 weeks after he was murdered, and it was the first time I was going to go on stage again because everyone was wrecked. I didn't even know like how long it would take before I felt like I could do comedy again. So I'm at the gas station getting gas, and just randomly run into a buddy of mine who's a cop. And I go, hey, what's up? What's going on, man? He's like, how you doing? You doing okay? I'm like, man, we're all fucked up, you know. And he goes, did I tell you that I was there? I go, no. You were there? He goes, dude.
What?
He goes, I was there when the kids ran from the mom. I go, what do you mean? He's like, after she killed herself, she barricaded herself in the after she killed Phil Hartman, she barricaded herself in the bathroom, and she had the kids in there with her, with a gun. And a lot of times when moms kill themselves, they'll kill their kids too. And the cops saw that, and so they kicked open the door. And when they kicked open the door, the kids ran from the mom. The kids ran out of the bathroom, and then the mom blew her brains out.
Fuck, I forgot about that part of it. I mean, I forgot that she killed herself.
And then,
See those arms? I've gone through phases in my life where I've done weightlifting. And obviously I'm not in one of those phases right now. But I've never done supplements. I've never done steroids. And I tell you what, your arms just don't wind up looking like that by doing a few more curls and a few more push-ups. There were people who, stonemasons from 100-something years ago, that would spend all day lifting and breaking stones with a low-fat diet. And you know what? Their arms didn't look like that either. That is an unnatural bulge that happens from supplements and drug use. Oh, that's right. RFK Jr., another steroid-laden monkey swinger, swinging from the chains on the beach. These are not natural, healthy builds. Which also means these are bodies which are predisposed to heavy drug use. We currently have the man, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., in charge of, I guess, the largest budgeted department in the United States, not talking about the drug epidemic. Oh, every once in a while he'll throw, I had someone in my family die. Yeah, and I'll make fun of his voice. Someone that has that position that will allow the drug epidemic to happen and will not talk about the real numbers and will then even allow it to pass by, not talk about the murder and lies, deserves to be made fun of. In the olden days, someone like that would have their clothes torn off of them. They would be drawn, quartered, hung, or in some order. So making fun of his voice is the least worst thing I can do. Their lies have enabled mass death. But I'm highlighting here that it's interesting how a lot of people who are in situation were predisposed to injecting all kinds of stuff into their bodies are also the very same ones who are right in between us and whatever media exists right now, podcast or mainstream, and its inability to communicate that we just had the largest loss of life event in the history of the United States of America, and it was not COVID. And ignoring it's not going to change it. It's there on Wikipedia. It's number 2 on Wikipedia only because Wikipedia is not accurate in the death numbers for COVID. Otherwise, it is number 1 on Wikipedia. COVID couldn't have happened in the United States without the opioid epidemic. Life expectancy would have been going up. Death numbers would have been going down. Or I should say life expectancy would have been going up. They wouldn't have had the number of deaths that they needed. It would have been clear what was going on. It would have been more clear what was happening in the hospitals. And they wouldn't have rolled out the transfections in an emergency fashion. But no, they all kept their mouths shut. So, I don't mean to belittle the tragedy to Phil Hartman, but if there's anybody on the planet who should have known how bad drug use is, even just in terms of abusing antidepressants and alcohol, it should have been Joe Rogan. If you want to claim pain and injury and sorrow from this, then you also should be part of the solution. And he's been burying it. As a matter of fact, the Joe Rogan podcast made the opioid epidemic possible. It couldn't have happened without him. It couldn't have happened without this podcast. And I am going to be dumping a ton of energy and focus on Joe Rogan and the network around Joe Rogan. You're going to see how this was all engineered. Let's listen to the rest of it with the rest of their cursing.
I'm seeing my friend at the gas station right before I go on stage. I'm going on stage in about 45 minutes.
Jesus.
Yeah. Half-hour drive to the Comedy Store. 15 minutes before I'm going to go on stage. And this is my face.
While they smoke.
Like, there's nothing funny in the world. There's nothing funny in the world. And then after I recovered, I took like another week off. And then I came back and I was like, he would just wanted me to keep going. I had a dream about him once. It was like the most realistic dream I've ever had about anybody in my life. Ever in my life. He was sitting in a lawn chair and I ran into him. And I was like, how are you doing? What are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm fine. He goes, we made up. He goes, it was a lot. He goes, obviously we had a lot to work out, and he laughed about it. And I said, well, that's great, man. And then he pushed the chair back and he was gone.
So now it's a comedy routine? It's just dark humor? What happened? She was just angry? He had a gambling debt? What happened? He knows that they were okay. Look, people have marital problems. They get into stress. They run out of money. They have kids. They get sleep deprived. They become unsynchronized. That happens a lot, unfortunately. Happens with the best people in the world. But, that's right. She was dealing with drug addiction and alcoholism. Because usually, people just don't snap like that. Fortunately. Joe Rogan knows that. He's not talking about... So even here, he's still kind of maintaining the... let's get back to the marijuana and the peyote and the whatever other pills we can pop. Oh, and if anything ever does come up about the drug epidemic, remember, it's the Jewish family in Purdue Pharma that did it. It's just pharma profits. Even though Purdue Pharma, relatively speaking, was not a very big drug company. Are we supposed to believe that we had the largest loss of life event in the history of the United States so one family could make $6 billion? Really? We're supposed to believe that? Does that make any sense to anybody? Of course it doesn't. Because it's a lie. Number one of the biggest hints, by the way, if anyone tells you follow the money and only follow the money, they are a bald-faced liar. When you have trillions and trillions available, you allow a few billion here and a few billion there to keep people distracted and occupied. The scale of this national security concern transcends money. I can't listen to any more. This is not a joke anymore. And I wanted it to be very clear and look into the camera. Joe Rogan's podcast made the opioid epidemic possible more than Purdue Pharma. Podcasts are being used by forces within the United States government and worldwide as a military operation against Americans themselves. I want to remind you one more thing. Dead people don't vote. There will never be justice for the dead unless the living demand it. Those who push Saul Alinsky and Gavin Newsom and the rest of the commies all know this. If you kill people and win the election, you get away with it. They want to kill and murder enough necessary to get power. And then they're going to encourage you to give up and forfeit and vote for the other side so you don't get killed because they still don't quite have it. There wouldn't be this going on if power was already secured, but I don't think it is. I think this is still a winnable thing. And I'm not saying voting for Republicans. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, I'd be very precise here. Joe Rogan Podcast made the opioid epidemic possible. 1 million dead, largest loss of life event in history of the United States of America. Thank you, everyone. I still need to recharge my batteries a little bit, but I'm still trying to do a little bit every day. It's been a real blessing to be able to catch up on a lot of things, and I still have so much to do. It doesn't seem like it's going to be long enough, but thank you for understanding for my reduced output this month. Joe Rogan Podcast made the opioid epidemic, largest loss of life event in the history of the United States possible. Thank you. Take care. God bless.